So Graham said last time that normally when I speak I've got props, and I haven't got any today, but what I need is your imaginations. I'm sure that we've all got vivid imaginations when we need them, so we're going to think in our heads instead. Now, it's not often that I preach the same sermon twice, but I had the opportunity to share at Saturday gathering last week, and I thought, you know what, this is a wording season for us, for our church as well. So I sort of worked on it a little bit more, and I thought I'd bring some sort of thoughts from that. And I wanted to have a think about, you know, the biggest British conversation there is, the weather. The weather. I'm not going to talk about gardening, partly because I'd have to confess to Anita that I still have not planted that bush. I did water, I got that, oh, I did do that. Every time I walk past it, I think Anita would be horrified. So I'm not talking about gardening, we're talking about the weather. Certainly last weekend, the weather was a big topic of conversation because storms are raging across the country, they have been all week. And smoky spiders are coming indoors, my husband loves that. You know, the rain has been fairly torrential, hasn't it? The wind has been blowing and it's been sort of really fierce. And, you know, there were a couple of Christian festivals last weekend. You know, Angie and Rob were at one of them down at Creation Fest, and they had to close some of that down because the marquees would fly away. And they closed New Wine early because the marquees were going to fly away. And, you know, we heard on the news about that dam in Whaley Bridge that had been there for years and years and years, but was about to potentially be breached, and it could have flooded everywhere. And even, you know, in China, you know, last weekend they were evacuating from towns, about 1 million people in total, because there was a deadly typhoon on the way. So we know that weather can have dramatic effects, and I don't know if you, sometimes you look at these YouTube clips and I think, well, that's terrible, I wouldn't want to be in that situation. But there was some that came up on my Facebook feed of these cruise ships that are caught in the storms. Anybody ever seen a cruise ship caught? It's nasty. When you have to Google it, right? And you see these ships are huge. There was one where the waves, they were coming up and splashing on the windows of cabins that were 11 floors up. I know, and they were like this everywhere on the waves. So, you know, this massive wave would come and they'd be up high and then all of a sudden crashing down and tilting to the left and the right. And you think, what was it been like on the inside? Absolutely horrendous. And one of the kids' program, well, not kids' program, but the program my kids used to like to watch was The Deadliest Catch. I don't know if anybody's seen that. But it's of the fishermen that go out in the Bering Sea, and they're fishing in the wildest of waters to go after king crab, the best of Alaska's crab out there. And it's horrendous, and you see these deckhands trying to walk, and literally the boat's like this, and the waves are crashing over, and this is their environment that they do their work in. And you can imagine that being caught up in a violent storm like that is pretty horrendous. It must be absolutely terrifying. Well, the Bible often uses stormy weather as an analogy for life. When the wind blows against us, when life situations come up, when the rain is torrential and things just look as if they're all in a storm around us. And it talks often about that, but it also talks about physical storms. And Jesus was caught up in a few of these physical storms himself. And there was one particular time, and Jesus had been speaking to a lot of people that gathered, and they were on the side, and he was in the boat standing up talking to them, and he'd been on his feet for hours, right? And it was like the great preach, the sermon, you know, that had many stories in it. And after a long day of preaching, he says to the disciples, look, let's get in the boat and go to the other side. And you know, this lake that they were going to cross wasn't a small lake. It wasn't like something where you could see the other side. It was pretty much like a sea. It was massive, right? And it was going to take them most of the night to row there. And it says in the Bible that they just got in the boat as they were. They didn't pack anything, didn't put any life vests on, didn't take anything for the trip. You know, we wouldn't go on a boat trip just as we were. We'd just get in the boat, especially not when it's going up on water like that. We'd pack a bit more, but it said they just got in the boat as they were, and they headed off into the middle of the lake to get the other side. And Jesus was so exhausted that it says that he was in the back of the boat asleep on a cushion. I mean, we know what it is, right, to be so exhausted that when your head hits the pillow, you're out cold. We know that kind of tiredness, right? And Jesus knew this kind of tiredness. His head hit the cushion and he was out cold. He was out for the count, sound asleep. And then out of nowhere, this storm comes on the lake, and the Bible calls it a squall. Now, sometimes you hear the the weather readers, and they say squally showers, and it means all that kind of rain that we used to get in Wales when I was a child that used to soak you without you realising, right? But actually a proper description of a squall is like a localised thunderstorm that absolutely lashes down. There's thunder and lightning everywhere. Sometimes it can come with snow and sleet. And the gusts of wind are tremendous, but they don't just blow for a few seconds, like a gust of wind that we'd be familiar with. In a squall, a gust of wind can last for minutes. Minutes at a time, this onslaught of the same gust is battering you and battering you. And that's the definition of a squall, and that's what kicked up whilst they were out rowing in the middle of the lake and Jesus was fast asleep. Now, these were experienced fishermen, right? You remember the disciples, that's the trade that they had for many years, probably their father's trade. They'd have been on this lake many times, they'd have come across storms many times. So this is not an unfamiliar situation for them. But they're out there now, they've got none of their fishing gear with them, because they got in the boat as they were, and Jesus is asleep, they're responsible for him, and the waves are now so big that they're coming overboard and they're filling up the boat. What are they going to do? What do you do in this situation? Scream. What do we do in this situation, right, where life storms come? Maybe we were prepared for them, maybe we weren't, doesn't really matter. We're in it now, and it's relentless. The wind is blowing, the rain is pouring. Life just all of a sudden kicked up a storm around us. Everything feels like it's going crazy. Maybe it's a sudden crisis, maybe it's a situation that's been brewing for some time, but all of a sudden it feels like it's starting to overwhelm us because it's coming inside the boat. See, at this point, we know we have Jesus in our hearts. We know we've given our lives to him. What are we going to do? What are we going to do this moment? I think in these moments, in our hearts and our attitudes, we might respond the same way as the disciples did. They woke Jesus up and they said, "Don't you care that we're going to drown? Don't you care?" Now, we may not like to admit it, but at some point I suspect many of us have said a similar thing to God. I have. Over things that don't look like this. I had a similar conversation with God when I couldn't find my way to a church because there were traffic. When all that traffic was going on in Ireland, I couldn't find how to get to a church, and I was beyond the time that the service had started. And what was coming out of my mouth? God, don't you care? There's people waiting for me to get there. Can you show me how to get there through this traffic? My sat nav can't get me there. Over something of nothing, really. So I think it's likely that when life comes and it stirs around us, one of the most immediate responses in our heart is, God don't care. Gave my life to him, thought he was in my boat. Surely he's going to come to my help. But this storm is still raging. This storm is not going away. And we can be desperately praying, getting other people around us to pray. The storm is not stopping. And in our hearts we question, is he off helping somebody else that he likes more? Is he asleep on the job? Is he just not really there for me? We thought he would do something and God hasn't done something, and apparently doesn't plan to do anything. All these emotions start to stir up in our heart. And it's often, this is at the heart of despondency in Christians and despondency in people, where in the midst of a crisis, in the midst of the storm, it looks like Jesus is asleep on the job. And it's often at these points that our faith hits rock bottom. Our faith goes overboard, so to speak. Well, they woke Jesus, and he woke up. Now, we didn't wake up saying, "Crikey, lads, what's going on? It's how cold. Wish you'd woken me up sooner. I could have done something about this." That's not how Jesus wakes up. Jesus wakes up, looks at the waves, be quiet. Looks at the storm, be still. He closes down the aggression of the storm absolutely immediately. And he turns to the disciples, and the first thing out of his mouth is, "Why are you so afraid? Where's your faith gone?" I mean, what faith in this moment was Jesus expecting them to have? Faith that the storm would rage, but they'd manage to get out the other side? Faith that other boats, because he says there were other smaller boats with them, that other boats would have come alongside them and rescued them? Well, maybe. Or maybe faith that if they'd ended up in the water, they said to wade along, done that before with Jonah, and they would have been okay. What kind of faith did Jesus think they should have at this moment? Well, we don't know, and the Bible doesn't tell us, but what he's challenging is the fact that they can think the only outcome of this scenario is we're going to drown. See, when we're in situations where life storms have kicked up, and we start to rehearse them in our head, invariably they don't end well. We don't worry ourselves into a place of encouragement. We don't worry ourselves into a place where we feel comfortable about something. When we rehearse in a situation in our head, normally it does not end well. And the disciples are in this frame of mind that the only way this ends is with us drowning. They had no faith for any other kind of outcome, however else it might be. The one thing a Christian is not permitted to do is worry. We're not supposed to be afraid. The Bible tells us lots and lots of times being afraid and fear indicates that we're not trusting God. So when we are afraid, when we're in the middle of this conversation with God, which is, this is all frightening me, life is frightening me right now, I can't see any way out of this other than it's all over, it's finished, all the damage is going to come at once. When that fear is coming up inside us, and this is what's coming out of our mouth, when God says to us, "Why are you afraid?" I wonder what we answer to that. Do we say, "Can you not see this? Can you not see the height of these waves?" You see, our response would be to describe the storm to God. We'd be like, well, if you want to know, so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that, this is what's happening here. And we go into this description about describing the storm as if he's not in it. Jesus was in the storm, he was in the boat. He was probably soaked through. He was probably had the wind blowing his hair in his eyes. He felt the magnitude of this storm exactly like the disciples did, but they were treating him as if somehow he was aloof, somehow he was separate, when all the time he was in there with them. And we can get into this position where we say to God, "Can you not see everything that's gone in my life? Did you not know? While you were asleep, let me just fill you in, God, on what's happened while you've been sleeping." And we get into this attitude of talking to him as if he doesn't know what's going on. And yet it tells us in Isaiah that he carried our pain and our sorrow. Jesus has carried them. He knows exactly what we're feeling when life kicks up. We don't need to describe the storm to him. When he asks us, "Why are we afraid?" we're not supposed to answer with a description of the storm. He knows that. He's feeling it. He's feeling the anxiety and the pain that's in our hearts, because it said that on the cross he carried it for us. He knows exactly what's going on. So he asks again, "Why are you afraid?" See, Graham said this morning, God spoke to him and said, "Make warriors." See, now we've got to have a warrior heart in us and stop the worrying. Because too many times we fall into a state of worry and then we can't control what comes out of our mouth. Instead, we become warriors. So we have a testimony like Maverick's when he says, "I'm flying through stuff as if there's nothing wrong." He said, "You've got stuff going on at work, you've got stuff happening," and we know that because you see Facebook posts, right? It's not on the social media. We know you've got stuff going on. You're not pretending it's not going on. You're not. It's going on and it's serious, right? It's big stuff. It's stuff that unsettles you. But now he knows I've got Jesus in the boat. What's he doing? He's flying through it as if nothing's wrong. He's not saying these things are all worked out. They're not. They're still going on. His storm is still raging. It's still battling. It's still pouring down. It's still blowing out. And the dust is never ceasing. He's all over the place like this ship. But he's flying through it as if there's nothing wrong. Why? Because his eyes are not on the storm. His eyes are on God. Because he turns being a warrior into as being a warrior. This is what it means to have God in our hearts. And all it takes is that dial 333. Call on God in this moment. I mean, we sang it, did we not? We love that song, Raise a Hallelujah. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. In the middle of the storm, you sing. What does hallelujah mean? Praise the Lord. In any language, hallelujah is interpreted as praise the Lord, right? In the middle of the storm, not when it stopped. In the middle of the storm, I'm not going to come out with my mouth and say, don't you care, God? Can you not see the size of these waves? No, instead, what I'm going to do is raise my hallelujah in the middle of the storm. And it says, right, in the same song, it says, you're going to raise your hallelujah with everything inside of you. No, sometimes it takes out everything inside of you. I'm going to raise the hallelujah. I'm going to determine to say, praise the Lord in the middle of this song. It's not a word that's going to come easy to you in the middle of the storm. See, now what I think is interesting, because what else I see on YouTube? You see those 10 worst roller coasters. Who's watched those? Horrendous, right? What are these roller coasters doing? Exactly the same as being on a ship in the sea. Your body's feeling the same movement. It's going up and down, left and right. Round circles, don't know where I am, don't know where I'm going. One you pay for and enjoy, the other one frightens the life out of you. What's the difference between the motion you're experiencing on sea and being on a roller coaster? The difference is this. You trust the grip that the roller coaster's got on you. You trust that you buckled in, you trust the engineering, and you'll go on exactly the same ride as if you were on the ship on the high seas being blown about. There you've got nothing that's holding you. In a roller coaster, you've got something that's holding you. What have we got gripping our lives? Jesus. We just got to trust the grip that Jesus has got on us. You know, the disciples were a whole lot happier when the storm stopped. Of course they were. And we like it when these storms go away. And we pray for life storms to go away. Is there anything wrong with praying for them to go away? No. Of course not. We should do that. But we must have faith in Jesus that if a storm continues to rage, even after so much prayer has been made to make it stop, Jesus has still got a grip on your life. He is still in your boat. It is not an indication that Jesus doesn't care about you. It's not an indication that he's off thinking about somebody else. It's not an indication that he is not bothered about your circumstance. We might think that in the moment. We might pray and pray and pray, but what we need to do is trust that he is in our boat and he's got a good grip on us. You see, we've got a promise for Jesus that he's never going to leave us and he's never going to forsake us. And one of my friends has written this book. It's called Songs from the Father, and I can get some copies of this room if you want to, but it's a daily devotional, and even in reading this daily devotional in the last week or so, it's reminding me of what it is to truly live every day knowing Jesus is in my boat. You know, it talks about living alive because he's alive in us, and so we don't need to walk in defeat or in death, but we are alive in him. It talks about living securely, even when we feel tossed about by the life that we're on and the waves that are hitting us. We're secure because we know our roots go down in him. We live a life that's favoured, where we know we're coming under God's favour, not because we've earned it, but because he loves us, because we're his children. And so out of his favour, he loves on us, and he always looks after us. So when things come that could potentially knock us off course, we know we're coming under his banner. We live accepted because we know that whatever it is that we've done, we're accepted by him. These are simple ways in which every day we remember that God is in these boats, in our boats. This is when you remember that the peace that's inside of you is way stronger than the storm that rages on the outside. That's why Jesus could sleep. He was totally chilled. He wasn't that he was wasn't experiencing the storm. He just had a stronger peace on the inside than the storm that raged on the outside. You know, Paul in the New Testament was in a situation where he was a prisoner, and he was in Jerusalem, and as a prisoner he was being sent to Rome, and he was going there to be tried in Rome. And the only way in those days to travel that kind of distance was by boat, and so he got onto this boat, and he knew that he was going to get to Rome because Jesus had told him that, so he knew his ultimate destination, he was going to get there. And Jesus had said that. But on the way, they had a shipwreck. Now, Jesus didn't tell him, Paul, you're going to Rome, but you'll have a couple of months in Malta on the way, and, oh, by the way, ship's going to wreck, but don't worry, you'll be fine. He didn't tell him that. He just told him, don't worry, you'll get to Rome. See, at that point, anything that happens is going to be part of God's, what God will cope with and what God will manage in Paul's life. Because he's sitting there with this assurance of, well, I didn't factor in a shipwreck, that's for sure. But Jesus has told me I'm going to get to Rome, so I'm totally cool with that. And there's this we won't read it now, but in Acts 27 and 28, it's the great story of Paul in this situation where he's on board of this ship, and he sort of said that the weather's nasty, guys, you really shouldn't set out. But they're like, well, we don't want to spend the winter in this port, we want to go and spend the winter in that port, so we're going to crack on. And they had a couple of days of fine weather, thought, well, we'll make a go for it, and Paul's like, you're going to regret it. And they go, and before long, this storm literally wrecks the ship. And they end up floating towards an island on any bits of wood that's left over from the ship. And they land on Malta. And the Maltese people, look after him really well. They named the island after him. You can still go there on holiday to St. Paul's Bay in Malta. And they name that bay after him. And they look after him for 3 months. And then they send him on his way in a new ship with lots and lots of provisions for them. And everybody on that ship that sailed with Paul was saved. Everybody was saved. Why? Because they stayed with him. Because he had faith and assurance to say, I don't expect this storm to come up. This storm looks like it's totally wrecking my journey right now. But Jesus has told me I'm going to get to where I'm going. So right now I'm going to have my eyes on what Jesus has told me, which is the future. And I know he will take care of my present situation. See, we have an assurance that we are going to make it to heaven. Do we have an assurance that life's going to be pretty? No, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite, the Bible tells us. Life is not going to be pretty. But our assurance is we will land there safe and well. And that's the assurance that we have in our hearts. If storms were allowed to come up against the disciples, and they were allowed to come up against Jesus, they're going to come up against us. We are going to have storms in our life. We may, like the disciples, be very experienced. We may have come across some stuff when people have commended us in our bravery and our courage, and then another storm comes and it frightens the life out of us, like the disciples. But we have his assurance that we're going to get where we're going. We have his assurance that he's in our boat. We have his assurance that he's got a grip on our lives. We can have absolute faith in that. We have to have faith that he has a hold on us. That even though the storm is raging, he still loves and cares for us. He still has a plan for it. It is not an indication that God does not care for you. So let me ask you this. When you feel this fear rising, when you feel that the storm is overwhelming you, when you feel like all of a sudden it's coming on the inside, you kept it on the outside, now it's in the boat, it's coming nearer, and you feel as if the only way out is devastation and destruction and loss of life. When God says to you, why are you afraid? Why are you afraid? What's our answer going to be? Are we going to swap our questions from why don't you care, God? And instead say, I'm trusting you, God. I'm choosing not to be afraid. It is a big thing to choose not to be afraid. It is a big thing to put our hope in him. Can I encourage you to exchange your fear, exchange your worrying for being a warrior? Can I encourage you that if you are questioning God on whether he cares or not, that you determinedly does, and that he's holding you in his hand. And when he asks you, Why are you afraid? You're like, oh, I know, I shouldn't be, right? Let me read some scriptures and remind myself of all the promises of God over my life. And allow you to meditate on that. Because meditating on the scriptures will get you to a place of encouragement, will get you to a place of hope, will get you to a place where you can move on. Worrying will not get you there. But deciding to trust in Jesus absolutely will. Should we pray? And it is good and it is right for us to pray over people that are going through storms. It's not